Welcome to the Dreams by Any Means Motivation Station. Good morning, y'all. Happy Friday. It's July 12th, about 10 in the morning. I got 5 miles in this morning. Started off the day with some good black coffee, some good water. Trying to do this 12-hour fast thing, so I'm not going to have my first meal until about 1. Before 1. I had like some snacks around 1, which was like almonds, dried cranberries, and cheese, but my last meal was like 8 o'clock, so maybe I would eat like 12 or something, but I try to wait to eat to 12 and just do fruit and water in the morning. But just tapping in with y'all on this Good Friday. I appreciate the support for the last 2 episodes. It was the playing catch up and rolling with the punches. Rolling with the Punches is doing amazing, not just on the audio, but even on YouTube. I uploaded the audio to YouTube, and within like 24 hours, we got like 75 views. And normally on YouTube, I don't even get that many views immediately, especially on just the audio only. So definitely proud of support for that. Got a lot of good feedback on that episode. And, that was just me sharing, some transparent moments of what's going on in my life, and I know everybody can relate to it. As I've been saying on the podcast, I think this has been a year of transition and will continue to be a year of transition in a good way. And part of transition is that, you got to go through what comes with the transition. And typically what comes with the transition is what I want to talk about today, is a process. What I did this morning, I reached out to some of my closest friends, some of the biggest podcast supporters, and, kind of asked them, hey, what's on your mind? What's going on in your life? And collecting that information and turning it into data that I could take and I can use to talk on my walk and talks. I'm sitting here right now with this beautiful view, beautiful weather. I'm feeling great. And when I was on my walk coming back towards the beach, the only thing I could think about was, the process. One of my friends, he talked about, just coasting and kind of doing the same thing over and over, not really happy with the job and where he's at and where he's trying to get, but also getting ready for a big step, of what's next, which is in his personal life, which is a blessing. And then my other friend, she gave me some feedback, talking about, to whom much is given, much is required. Are we ready for what we prayed for? Why do people want to give the minimum but expect the maximum from a person or a thing that they're giving the minimum to? And as I was on my walk coming back, what came to mind was the process. And what also influenced the process is because for me personally, on a spiritual level, I feel like God has been talking to me and telling me, like, don't interrupt the process. As I've been talking about on these last couple episodes, what's been going on, what hasn't been going my way, the patience, the this and that. The process is literally something that I think we all can relate to right now, right? And when it says about the process, and the thing I said, don't interrupt the process, when you think about a process, what is it, right? You could be processing a software on a computer. You could be processing your game. Shout out to Drew. On your PS5, on your Xbox. You can be going through a process at your job, through a business process. There are different types of processes, right? But one thing about a process is that, if you interrupt the process, it's going to mess up what it's supposed to do. I was thinking about sometimes when we're processing, downloading something on our phone, sometimes it says don't exit this screen or it will start over the process. That's similar to our lives. Sometimes we want to exit the screen. Sometimes we want to rush the process. Sometimes we want to skip past steps to get to what we think should be done at our time. But if you interrupt that process, it won't finish processing. And then now you got to do what? You got to start all over because you were impatient, because you thought you had an idea of what the process should be, and we just sometimes think we know it all and we think everything is supposed to go the way that we want to go, right? But I think in this time where we're at right now, and people that can relate to this, and whether if you can't relate to this today, I'm sure you related to it before, and more than likely you'll relate to it in the future, because life is life and things happen. But I was looking up online different types of processes and different things and what it means. And I was looking at a process through a business standpoint, from a Six Sigma approach to business. And it pretty much reads that a process is an organized group of related activities that combine to transform one or more kinds of input into outputs that are of value to customers. In other words, a process is an activity or group of activities that takes the inputs adds value, and provides outputs to internal and external customers. Now, in this case, who's the customer? Us. Our lives, our personal goals, our professional goals. If you're a father, you're a mother, your role as a parent, your role as an employee, as a leader, your role as a partner, your role as a son, daughter, whatever the case is, right? It's part of a process, okay? So when it says input, water, tea, leaves, milk, sugar. When it says process, boiling water and tea, leaves, add sugar and milk. What is the output? It's a cup of tea. Now, if you skip some of those processes, y'all probably can relate. I'm a tea drinker. If you sometimes don't add anything to your tea, it's going to taste bitter. It's not going to really have a little sweet feeling. It's not going to have that ginger lemon kick to it. So I'm saying all that to say is that we're trying to skip through this process, and sometimes we got to just let the process be. So, it's a good Friday. Y'all heard on Rolling with the Punches, the boxing analogy, this being a 7th round, and how when you're in a deep battle and a deep fight, when you get to that 7th round, it's typically when things start to change, you get to figuring out the opponent, all that type of stuff, right? It's the same thing, man. It's a process in that analogy that I was giving with boxing. It's a process when I talked about playing catch up. It's a process when we talk about adopting a by any means mindset. What do I say at the end of each episode? Hustle plus faith equals success. That's a process. If you take away the hustle and then you just go on faith, yeah, you're going to get something done, but it's not going to be the any means process. If you hustle, but you don't have your faith and you ain't, letting spiritual God, godly guide you, if you ain't like going through that, then it's not going to be the any means result of what I talk about each episode and what this podcast stands for. So what I want everybody to do as we go into this weekend, whatever you doing right now, wherever you at in life, you could be sad, you could be mad, you feel depressed. Even if you are sad, right, mad, depressed, angry, that's part of your process. That can be part of your process. Now, you don't let that part of the process become the overall, part of the process, but you getting through that phase could be part of your process of going from angry to happy, going from depressed to super optimistic and super, energetic and joyful. So 7-minute mark. I'm not going to wrap y'all up like I always say. We could keep going, but this is a good morning walk and talk. I'm happy at the process I'm going through right now, and I think it's some great outputs that's on the way, and I'm wishing y'all have great outputs as well. But remember, you got to focus on them inputs and let the process continue to process. So like I always say, hustle plus faith equals success, and I'm going to catch y'all on the next one. Have a good weekend.